Now that we're starting to see some rootworms, or actually a lot of rootworms, that have become resistant to single trait BTs, insecticides have really gotten popular again, these soil insecticide products like Aztec, Force, Counter, Capture. But the problem is there can be interaction with the insecticides and the herbicides that you might use on your farm that could end up hurting your yield.
Well, back in the 1990s, this was always part of the discussion when we were doing crop plans for farmers. Hey, pay attention to which products you're using here, because one that you use pre-emerge could interact with the insecticide that you're using, or one that you're applying post-emerge several months later could still have an interaction with that pre-emerge insecticide you're using.
Like Counter, for example, insecticide, and Accent herbicide. I saw one field one time that was just completely devastated. It looked like you took a torch to it. It was crazy, and it was all because of this interaction, and I didn't really realize how bad it was going to be. I knew the warnings and everything, and I got a call one day and a farmer said, "Hey, you want to take a look at this?" I said, "Whoa, you're not going to get much yield after you did that." And then I found out he'd use Counter down, he'd use Accent post.
Well, the problem is this is all happening like one whole generation ago, it seems like, and now we're dealing with young agronomists that haven't seen this before. We're also dealing with young farmers that may never have considered it before. I talk to farmers every day that have never used an insecticide, and they say, "Wow, I thought corn rootworm was going to be under control just for my traits. Now I've got an issue." And you know, many of those guys are turning to Smart Stack traits, and that's great. The problem is there isn't enough Smart Stacks to go around for every single acre in the country
plus
this
the
year.
fact that the bug still has to take a bite out of that plant before it's going to die, and if there are so many rootworms out there, that's a lot of bites, and you're still going to have some yield loss. So a lot of guys, even with Smart Stacks, like on our farm, we're still going to use at least a half rate of insecticide and maybe even a full rate. So anyway, let's get specific into this. Which insecticides are we concerned about, and which herbicides are we concerned about?
Well, when it comes to insecticides, you know, the ones that we've really liked in terms of dry are Aztec and also Force. Now with Force, that's strictly a pyrethroid, and we don't see an interaction with that pyrethroid with different herbicides. We really haven't seen a big issue as far as if you're using Force, you can't use this herbicide or that one. It's when we get into other products that we see an issue. Counter is probably the biggest one.
Okay, so Counter is by far the worst. That's an organophosphate, but it's also systemic. Now, other organophosphates would include Lorsban and most of what makes up Aztec. So we still have some concerns with Lorsban and Aztec, but it's much, much worse with Counter. Then if you go to the herbicide side, what we're worried about here is mainly ALS products, but we're also to some degree concerned about the HPPDs, things that turn weeds white, like Callisto, Loudus, Impact, Armazon, those types of products.
Now these herbicides could be used pre-emerge. They could be soil applied products that you're putting on around planting time, or they could be post-emerge products. And this gets to be a challenge because a lot of times we have short-term memory. We don't remember what we did 3 months ago out in the field. It's just, all right, I have this weed, I need to control it. What's my best option? That's not the case anymore. Now you have to look at your full cropping plan of what insecticide did I use, what pre did I use, and I don't want to get into trouble here with any of these products.
Yep, so for example, when I was running through the list of Callisto, Loudus, Impact, and Armazon, these HPPDs, I kind of forgot about Balance Flex. That's a pre-emerge product that is an HPPD. It's the same kind of thing with the ALS herbicides. You sure think about Accent that you could use post-emerge or Beacon, but did you remember that, oh yeah, Python is an ALS product, and Python is going to be found in Triple Flex and Sure Start. So now I'm concerned about those products too. So here's what I will tell farmers. You've got to decide on one end or the other. Do you love a certain insecticide? Maybe you love Counter because you got some nematodes out there. You say, man, this stuff's the best. I'm absolutely using Counter. That's fine. Now you're just limited on what you can use for herbicide.
Well, hold on. It may not be that you love Counter so much. It may be, you know what? My dealer was out of Force and he was out of Aztec.
That's why you got to order early.
Counter was my next best choice.
That's why you got to order early.
Well, here's the challenge though. There's supply shortages with those dry insecticides because the demand has gone up so much that the manufacturers have not kept up.
Okay, so I want to come back to pick your product. So if, let's say on the herbicide side, you say, man, Sure Start's been fantastic. I'm absolutely using Sure Start this coming year. That's fine, not a problem at all. You can use one of the pyrethroids insecticides. You've got Capture Liquid, or you've got Force Dry, or even there's Force Liquid that's available too. So you've got those options, and I would stay away from the organophosphates. Now, I also get some pushback from some of these big companies, and they say, well, there's not a lot of problem with my product and this other one over here. If it's one of the weaker herbicide ones and one of the weaker insecticide ones, not a big risk. But for me, I still really don't want to take my chances. I'd rather not use any organophosphate when I'm using any ALS or HPPD herbicide.
Well, to sum things up, When you're using a soil-applied insecticide, read the label. Talk to an agronomist. Find out which products you can use and which products you can't use for weed control later on in the season, so you don't have a negative interaction within your plant that could rob your yield or even kill the corn
What
plant.
this all comes down to, and the reason why we're talking about it today, is we want you to think ahead. Because again, like Darren said earlier, if you just make a choice on insecticide, well, now you may have really limited your herbicide choices, or vice versa. So be planning ahead, think this thing through, and talk to your agronomist.
One other thing you want to talk to an agronomist about is our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?